I'll give you $10,000 if you can serve me properly, in Korean. The challenge sliced through the penthouse air like a blade. Sasha's grip tightened on her delivery tablet, the plastic case cracking slightly under the pressure as her mind processed what Jun Rol Ma had just proposed. Behind him, well-dressed men exchanged knowing glances, already savoring the humiliation of another working-class woman who'd stumbled into their world. Jun Rol, known in certain circles simply as Ma, lounged in his leather chair with the relaxed posture of someone who'd never lost a bet in his life. His neck tattoos crawled up toward his jawline like ancient warnings. The gold rings on his fingers caught the amber light as he gestured dismissively toward the delivery bag still hanging from her shoulder. His eyes held that predatory patience of a man who collected reactions the way others collected art. He expected her to stammer, to bow apologetically and retreat, to confirm she was precisely what she appeared to be, forgettable. Her brother's tuition was due in 2 days. Sasha's brain ran the brutal arithmetic automatically, the same numbers that had haunted her for weeks. Their grandmother's funeral expenses had drained the last of their savings. Her delivery job was supposed to be temporary, just until she finished her linguistics degree. That was 3 years ago now, and the bills kept multiplying. 저는 당신의 주문을 정확하게 처리할 수 있습니다. Sasha replied in fluid Korean, her pronunciation carrying the exact Seoul intonation she'd absorbed from years of self-study. I can handle your order precisely. The penthouse went absolutely still. Jun Rol's arrogant smile faltered, genuine shock registering across his features before he could mask it. Around the table, his associates shifted in their seats, unaccustomed to seeing their boss surprised by anyone, much less a delivery worker in a worn navy uniform who couldn't afford new shoes. Sasha had learned young that survival meant weaponizing whatever you possessed. Her grandmother's Korean phrasebooks, studied by flashlight during late-night shifts, had seemed like cultural connection, not leverage, not armor, just fragments of a heritage she'd never experienced firsthand. Now, watching Jun Rol's expression shift from disbelief to something far more calculating, intrigue, Sasha realized she'd just rewritten her entire future. She simply didn't know yet if she'd just escaped her circumstances or walked straight into something worse. My office. Tomorrow, 2 o'clock. Jun Rol slid a black business card across the glass table with deliberate ceremony. $10,000 as promised, and perhaps we discuss how your particular skills might be properly valued. Sasha accepted the card with unsteady hands. The address belonged to one of the city's most notorious buildings, a tower that people like her only saw from street level. Her dispatcher's voice crackled through her earpiece, already annoyed about her extended delivery time. She'd been warned about this building. Drop the food, collect payment, never make eye contact with the residents. She'd just shattered every protocol. The elevator ride down felt endless, Sasha's reflection in the polished metal doors showing a woman she barely recognized. Walking to her car in the underground garage, keys threaded between her fingers like makeshift weapons, she thought about her brother's acceptance letter to medical school. $10,000 would cover an entire semester, buy 6 months to find something sustainable. Accepting money from a criminal violated every principle she'd built her life around. But desperation had a way of erasing those boundaries, and Sasha was discovering that survival rarely arrived with your morals intact. The cash felt heavier than it should have. Sasha sat in her car outside the bank, staring at the envelope Jun Rol's assistant had handed her that morning. 100 crisp $100 bills, still smelling faintly of cologne, and something darker, power maybe, or the particular scent of money that had changed hands too many times to be clean. She'd expected a check, something traceable, professional. The cash told her everything she needed to know about the world she'd just entered. Inside the bank, the transaction took less than 10 minutes. The teller's eyes widened slightly at the stack of bills, but asked no questions. Sasha transferred funds with mechanical precision. Her brother Marcus's tuition first, their grandmother's outstanding funeral costs second, the overdue rent that had been generating late fees like compound interest, the utility bills with their red final notice stamps. By the time she walked back to her car, she had $1,847 remaining. A fortune 3 days ago. Now it felt like pocket change. Her phone buzzed before she'd even started the engine. Unknown number. She knew who it was before answering. Miss Reed. Not a question. Jun Rol's voice carried the same casual authority it had in the penthouse, but now there was an edge of familiarity that made her skin prickle. Yes, thank you. The words tasted wrong in her mouth. Thanking a criminal for money that probably came from sources she didn't want to imagine. Good. I have a dinner meeting tonight, 8 o'clock. I'll need you to translate. A pause, deliberate and weighted. Wear something appropriate, business formal. My driver will collect you at 7:30. Sasha's mind raced. I have a shift tonight. No, you don't. His tone didn't change, but the finality was absolute. You work for me now. I'll compensate you accordingly. $500 for tonight. Cash. The line went dead before she could respond. Sasha sat motionless in the parking lot, the reality of her situation crystallizing like ice in her chest. The $10,000 hadn't been a payment, it had been a down payment, a deposit on something she hadn't agreed to sell. Her time, her skills, her complicity. She thought about calling him back, returning the money somehow, walking away before whatever this was became irreversible. But Marcus's acceptance letter was pinned to their refrigerator at home, and the rent was finally, blessedly paid. Her phone showed 17 missed calls from her delivery dispatch. They'd already replaced her, she realized. Someone had made a call, pulled strings she didn't know existed. Jun Rol hadn't bought her services, he'd bought her. At 7:29 p.m., a black Mercedes pulled up outside her apartment building. The driver didn't speak, didn't introduce himself. He simply opened the rear door and waited, with the patient professionalism of someone accustomed to transporting people who'd run out of choices. Sasha smoothed her only business suit, purchased for job interviews she'd never gotten, and stepped inside. The door closed behind her with the soft, expensive click of a lock engaging. The restaurant occupied the top floor of a building Sasha had delivered to once before, back when she'd used the elevator service and never seen past the kitchen. Now she sat at a private table behind soundproof glass, watching the city lights blur into constellations below, while Jun Rol conducted business as if she were furniture. Across from him sat two Korean men in identical charcoal suits. The older one, Mr. Choi, had introduced himself with a bow so slight it bordered on insult. The younger remained nameless, his attention fixed on a tablet that he consulted like scripture. The shipment arrives Thursday, 20 containers manifested as consumer electronics, Samsung parts officially. Sasha translated automatically, her voice steady even as her mind started connecting dots she wished would stay scattered. Jun Rol nodded. And the secondary cargo? Choi's expression didn't change. Secured in the false panels as discussed, the harbor inspector has been compensated. Your distribution network can begin operations by Friday evening. The words hung in the air while Sasha translated, her throat tightening around each syllable. Distribution network, false panels, compensated inspectors. The language of legitimate business wrapped around something decidedly illegitimate. She'd known, abstractly, what Jun Rol was, but knowing and understanding the machinery of it were different things entirely. The usual products? Jun Rol asked, his tone as casual as discussing coffee preferences. Primarily pharmaceuticals this cycle, high-grade opioids from the Seoul suppliers, some synthetic compounds your West Coast contacts requested. Choi slid a document across the table, manifests and transport codes. Your associate will need these for the warehouse processing. Sasha's hands trembled slightly as she translated. Pharmaceuticals. The word felt clinical, sanitized, but she knew what it meant. pills that would end up in suburban medicine cabinets, teenagers' backpacks, the hands of people as desperate as she'd been 3 days ago. Was, still. Jun Rol caught her hesitation, his eyes flicking toward her with the sharp attention of a predator sensing weakness. For a moment, she thought he might address it. Instead, he simply continued the conversation, asking about shipping schedules and payment transfers, while Sasha's voice operated on autopilot. The dinner lasted 90 minutes. She translated supply chains and distribution percentages, money laundering protocols disguised as import tariffs, names of people she prayed she'd never have to remember. By the time dessert arrived, untouched, Sasha felt like she'd swallowed glass. In the Mercedes afterward, Jun Rol finally spoke. "You did well tonight." Sasha stared at the partition separating them from the driver. "Those pharmaceuticals are none of your concern." His voice carried no anger, just statement of fact. "You translate, that's all. The business itself belongs to me." He pulled an envelope from his jacket, $500 as promised. "Same time Tuesday, another meeting. Double tonight's rate if you keep performing at this level." Sasha took the money because refusing it wouldn't change what she'd already done, wouldn't untranslate those words, or unknow what she now understood about the empire she was helping build. As she climbed the stairs to her apartment, Marcus's textbooks visible through their window, she understood the full price of that initial $10,000. It wasn't just her time Jun Rol had purchased, it was her silence. The third meeting wasn't a meeting at all. Sasha arrived at the penthouse expecting another dinner with businessmen whose words she'd have to sanitize into English. Instead, Jun Rol sat alone on the balcony, his suit jacket draped over a chair, shirt unbuttoned at the collar. A half-empty bottle of soju stood on the glass table beside him. "You're early," he said without turning around. "Good. Sit." She hesitated at the threshold, every instinct screaming that this intimacy was more dangerous than any business deal, but refusing wasn't an option she had anymore. The city stretched beneath them, oblivious and glittering. Jun Rol poured 2 glasses of soju without asking if she drank. "You've been wondering," he said, still facing the skyline, "why someone like me needs someone like you." Sasha said nothing. Let him fill the silence. "My father came to this country with nothing, less than nothing, debt from the crossing, borrowed from men who don't forget." He touched his neck absently, fingers tracing the ink that disappeared beneath his collar. "These aren't fashion, they're ledgers. Every mark represents a debt paid, a territory earned, a rival eliminated." He finally turned to face her, and in the dim light she could see the tattoos more clearly, not the decorative dragons she'd assumed, but intricate Korean characters and symbols that told a story in a language most people couldn't read. This one, he pointed to a series of characters near his collarbone, my father's name. He died in a factory fire. Unofficial workers, no safety regulations, locked exits. The owner paid off the inspectors. No investigation. His voice remained flat, emotionless. My mother cleaned houses, rich houses. She'd bring me along sometimes, let me see how people with legitimate wealth lived. Safe, protected. Their children went to universities, had futures. He drank, the soju disappearing in one smooth motion. She died before seeing me become what I am. Cancer, no insurance. By the time we found affordable treatment, it was too late. The weight of his gaze settled on her like a physical thing. "You think I don't know what desperation looks like, Miss Reed? I built this empire on it. Mine, my father's. Every person who works for me has the same story. Different details, same ending. We do what we must with the world we're given." Sasha finally found her voice. "That doesn't justify." "I'm not asking for justification. I'm explaining why you're here." He refilled both glasses. "You're brilliant, educated, fluent in languages most people will never learn, and you're delivering food to survive. The system failed you the same way it failed my parents, the same way it fails thousands every day." He leaned forward, his expression intense, but not threatening. I'm offering you something that system never will, compensation matching your actual worth, protection, resources, but only if you stop pretending you have alternatives. The words hit like a diagnosis she'd been avoiding, because he was right. Her degree meant nothing without connections. Her skills were worthless in a market that demanded experience she couldn't afford to get. The legitimate world had already abandoned her. Jun Rol stood, buttoning his shirt with practiced efficiency, the vulnerability vanishing as quickly as it had appeared. Same time Thursday. Bring your passport. We're traveling. He left her alone on the balcony with 2 glasses of soju and the uncomfortable realization that monsters were easier to hate when they stayed monstrous. The package sat on her passenger seat like a coiled snake. Just a delivery, Jun Rol's lieutenant had said, handing her the sealed box and an address in Koreatown. Nothing complicated, drop it with the man at the door, say exactly what I told you in Korean, then leave. You'll have 2,000 in your account by tonight. Sasha had done deliveries for years. This should have felt routine. It didn't. The box was too light for electronics, too carefully wrapped for documents, and the address belonged to a restaurant she recognized, one that made the news 6 months ago when its owner was questioned about loan sharking operations. She should have refused, should have drawn a line, but Marcus's housing deposit was due, and $2,000 had stopped feeling like a fortune and started feeling like necessity. The restaurant's exterior was dark, despite the dinner hour. Sasha's knuckles rapped against the middle door 3 times as instructed. A man answered, young, maybe 30, with the wary eyes of someone who'd learned to expect trouble. 저는 마 선생님께서 보냈습니다. Mr. Ma sent me. The man's face went pale. He stared at the box like it contained a bomb. This is a mistake. Tell him we're working on the payment. We just need... I'm just the messenger, Sasha interrupted, thrusting the package toward him. I don't know what's inside. But she did know, had known the moment she saw his expression. The man took the box with shaking hands. As he tore open the wrapping, Sasha turned to leave, then heard his strangled gasp. She shouldn't have looked back. Inside lay a stack of photographs. Even from several feet away, she could see enough. Images of the man's daughter at her elementary school, time-stamped and annotated with her schedule, her route home, the playground where she stopped every day. Tell him we'll have everything by Friday. Please, she's 8 years old. Sasha's stomach turned to ice. She'd delivered threats before, without knowing it, probably, translation conversations that carried implicit violence, but this was explicit, targeted, a child used as leverage against her father's debt. She made it to her car before her hands started shaking so badly she couldn't grip the steering wheel. The $2,000 that would appear in her account wasn't payment for translation services. It was payment for being complicit in terrorizing a family. Her phone buzzed. Jun Rol's message was brief. Well done. I have another task for you tomorrow. Sasha sat in that dark parking lot for 20 minutes, watching the restaurant's lit windows, imagining the man inside making frantic calls to gather money he probably didn't have. She thought about that little girl, oblivious to the photographs, to the invisible crosshairs her father's desperation had painted on her back. She thought about Marcus, safe in his dorm room, his tuition paid with money that came from this same machinery of fear. The parallel made her want to scream. Instead, she started the engine and drove home, because what else could she do? Report Jun Rol and watch her brother's future collapse? Refuse future jobs and face whatever consequences came from disappointing a man who made his points with children's photographs? She'd crossed so many lines already. Each one had seemed survivable at the time. But tonight, Sasha understood the truth. There was no limit to how far she'd fall. There was only gravity, and she'd already jumped.
The laptop wasn't meant for her. Jun Rol's assistant had handed it over with barely a glance, distracted by a phone call conducted in rapid Mandarin. Boss wants you to review the Seoul contracts before tomorrow's call. Make sure the Korean is accurate. Password is on the sticky note. Sasha had taken it to a coffee shop, seeking neutral ground away from the penthouse's suffocating luxury. The contracts were straightforward. More pharmaceutical shipments, more false manifests, more money moving through channels designed to look legitimate. She was finishing the third document when a notification popped up in the corner. An email auto-synced to the laptop's account. The preview showed an attachment, sr_financial_records.xlsx. SR. Her initials. Her finger hovered over the trackpad. Opening emails meant for Jun Rol violated what little trust existed between them. But her name in that file name triggered every survival instinct she'd honed over the past 3 weeks. She clicked. The spreadsheet opened to reveal a meticulous audit trail. Bank transactions, wire transfers, cash deposits, all linked to accounts bearing her name, accounts she'd never opened. The amounts were staggering. $47,000 over 6 weeks, each transaction carefully documented with dates and routing numbers. Her coffee went cold as she scrolled. There were records of payments to corrupt customs officials, bribes to harbor inspectors, even a $15,000 transfer labeled Witness Elimination Fund. Every transaction pointed to her as the financial hub of Jun Rol's operation. Her hands shook as she opened the attached email thread. The sender was listed only as Lieutenant Che. His message to an unknown recipient was clinical in its precision. The translator has become a liability. Federal investigation imminent. Recommend establishing her as primary financial operator before asset seizure. She has no legal representation and insufficient understanding of the operation to effectively defend herself. The response, timestamped 2 hours ago, proceed. Ensure documentation is comprehensive. Sasha's vision blurred. Someone inside Jun Rol's organization wasn't just auditing, they were building a case, and she was the designated fall person, the outsider with just enough access to be credible, just enough involvement to be guilty, and just enough desperation to have no powerful allies. She thought of every transaction she'd translated, every meeting she'd attended, her voice on recordings, her presence in photographs, her name on visitor logs. All of it could be weaponized into a narrative where she wasn't a coerced translator, but a willing architect. Her phone buzzed. Jun Rol. Dinner tonight, 8 p.m., penthouse. Bring the laptop. Did he know? Was this a test? Or was he as blind to the betrayal as she'd been? Sasha arrived at the penthouse 15 minutes early, the thumb drive burning a hole in her jacket pocket. Jun Rol's usual guards flanked the entrance, but tonight their searches felt more thorough, their expressions harder. They found nothing. She'd hidden the drive in her bra, the small plastic rectangle pressing against her ribs like a second heartbeat. Jun Rol stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows, his silhouette sharp against the city lights. He didn't turn when she entered. Lieutenant Che recommended I terminate our arrangement. He believes you've become a security risk. Sasha's throat tightened. And what do you believe? I believe. He turned slowly, his eyes searching her face. You're terrified, but not of being fired. She pulled the thumb drive from its hiding place, holding it up like a white flag. Someone's framing me, building a case that makes me look like your financial operator. When the feds come, and they will, I'm the one they'll arrest while everyone else disappears. Jun Rol's expression didn't change, but something flickered behind his eyes. He gestured for the drive. For 5 minutes, the only sound was his breathing and the soft click of the laptop keyboard. Sasha watched his jaw tighten as he scrolled through the spreadsheets, the email threads, the meticulously constructed evidence of her supposed crimes.
Jay, he finally said, the name falling like a verdict. And probably Min Jun, maybe 2 others. He closed the laptop with controlled violence. They've been planning this for months, using you as their exit strategy. You knew? Sasha's voice cracked. You knew they were... I suspected internal problems. I didn't know they'd chosen such an elegant solution. His smile was bitter. Frame the outsider, trigger a federal investigation, and disappear while I'm occupied protecting myself. Very efficient. Sasha's legs felt weak.
So what happens now? You cut your losses and I end up in federal prison? Jun Rol poured 2 glasses of whiskey, sliding one across his desk. Or we give them exactly what they want, a final delivery. I don't understand. Che thinks he's invisible. He's convinced I trust him completely. Jun Rol opened his phone, pulling up a calendar. There's a shipment arriving Saturday, high-value cargo. He'll need to be present to ensure his evidence chain remains intact, to document your supposed involvement. Sasha began to see the shape of it. You want to catch them in the act. I want to expose them, let them think everything is proceeding as planned, that I'm ignorant to their scheme. You'll be there, translating, as usual, but this time we'll have our own documentation, our own witnesses. His eyes were cold, calculating. And when the time comes, we'll show them what happens to people who mistake my tolerance for weakness. The plan was dangerous, possibly suicidal. It required her to walk back into the machinery designed to destroy her, to pretend ignorance while surrounded by people who'd weaponized her existence. But the alternative was running with no money, no protection, and federal charges already being built with her name on them. What's my cut? The words surprised her, how quickly she'd learned to speak his language. Jun Rol's smile was genuine this time, almost approving. Che's current salary, $80,000 a year, plus the satisfaction of watching him realize his mistake. Sasha drank the whiskey in one burning swallow. And after, when this is over? After, Jun Rol said, refilling her glass, we discussed your actual role in this organization, one built on truth rather than convenience. She should have felt relief. Instead, she felt the final door closing on who she'd been before that first delivery to this penthouse. Saturday, then, Sasha said. Tell me everything I need to know. Jun Rol began to plan, and she listened, because survival had taught her the most important lesson. Sometimes the only way out was through. The plan lasted exactly 12 hours before it fell apart. Sasha awoke Saturday morning to find 3 missed calls from an unknown number and a text from Lieutenant Che. Change of plans. Car will collect you at 6 a.m. Come alone. Tell no one. She'd tried calling Jun Rol, straight to voicemail. Tried his assistant. No answer. By the time the black sedan pulled up, dawn was breaking cold and gray over the city. She had no choice but to get in. The shipping yard sprawled along the harbor like a concrete graveyard, containers stacked in rusting towers beneath skeletal cranes. Che waited beside a warehouse, his smile thin and predatory. 2 men flanked him, not Jun Rol's usual guards, muscles she didn't recognize. Ms. Reed, thank you for being punctual. His English was perfect, deliberate. We have a situation that requires your linguistic expertise. Sasha's hand tightened around her phone in her pocket. Where's Jun Rol? Detained, a scheduling conflict. Gestured toward the warehouse entrance. Inside, please. The space was vast and empty except for a single shipping container, doors open. Inside, bound to a chair with plastic zip ties, was Min Jun, one of Jun Rol's senior lieutenants. Blood dripped from his split lip. Sasha's stomach dropped. What is this? Insurance, Che said. Min Jun here made the mistake of informing Mr. Ma about certain irregularities in our financial records. Your financial records specifically. I need you to translate a message for him. The trap had sprung backwards. Che hadn't been working with Min Jun. He'd been eliminating witnesses who might warn Jun Rol. And now Sasha was supposed to be the instrument of betrayal. "저는," she started, her Korean faltering. The warehouse doors exploded inward with a metallic shriek. Jun Rol entered with 6 men, weapons drawn, his face a mask of controlled fury. "Che, step away from her." Che's gun swung toward Sasha's head. Another step and the translator becomes a liability we no longer need. Time crystallized. Sasha could see the calculations running behind Jun Rol's eyes, the distance, the angles, the acceptable losses. She was one translator, replaceable. Then Min Jun, bleeding and bound, shouted in Korean, "She's the only proof! The thumb drive!" Che's attention flickered for a fraction of a second. Sasha dropped, muscle memory from a self-defense class she'd taken 3 years ago taking over. The gunshot was deafening, punching through the space where her head had been. She hit concrete as chaos erupted. Jun Rol's men returning fire, Che's guards diving for cover behind the container. Someone grabbed her arm, one of Jun Rol's guards, dragging her toward a forklift as bullets sparked off metal. Her ears rang. Smoke from discharged weapons turned the warehouse hazy. Through the chaos, she saw Jun Rol advancing on Che with terrifying precision. No wild shots, each movement deliberate. Che fired twice, both shots going wide, before Jun Rol closed the distance and struck him across the face with his pistol. The gun clattered away. Che collapsed. Silence fell like a weight. Sasha's hands were scraped raw from the concrete. Her ears still rang. Min Jun was being cut free from his restraints, coughing and spitting blood. Che lay motionless, breathing but unconscious. Jun Rol appeared above her, offering his hand. "Can you stand?" She could, barely. "The thumb drive," he said quietly. "Tell me you still have it." Sasha patted her jacket pocket, felt the small rectangle still there. Nodded. "Good." Jun Rol looked at Che's unconscious form with an expression that promised worse things than bullets. "Then we finish this." The sirens started before they made it to the cars. Federal vehicles poured into the shipping yard from 3 directions, blue and red lights painting the dawn sky and frantic pulses. Someone had tipped them off. Maybe Che had a contingency. Maybe the gunfire had triggered sensors. The reason didn't matter. Jun Rol's men scattered like startled birds, disappearing into the maze of containers. But he stood frozen, calculating odds that were rapidly approaching zero. "My car," Sasha grabs his arm, the role reversal so absurd it didn't register until later. "They don't know my plates. I'm just a delivery driver." For a moment, she thought he'd refuse. Pride or strategy or simple disbelief. Then he moved, following her between containers toward the perimeter fence where her ancient Honda sat in visitor parking. They made it into the car 30 seconds before the first federal agents rounded the warehouse. Sasha forced her hands steady on the wheel, pulling out of the lot with the careful speed of someone who had nothing to hide. Just another early morning worker leaving the industrial district. In the rearview mirror, agents swarmed the warehouse like ants. "Where are we going?" Jun Rol's voice was tight, controlled. "Somewhere I know they won't look." Sasha navigated through streets she'd memorized during 3 years of deliveries. The service alleys, the loading zones, the routes that avoided traffic cameras and major intersections. The theater district. There's a prop warehouse where I used to drop costume supplies. Owners in Europe for the month. They drove in silence for 20 minutes, Sasha's mind racing faster than the car. The thumb drive in her pocket contained enough evidence to dismantle Jun Rol's entire organization, or enough evidence to prove Che's betrayal and her own coercion, depending on who she gave it to. The warehouse was exactly as she remembered, locked but accessible through a loading door with a broken latch. Inside, theatrical sets and abandoned props created a maze of false realities, a fitting place for decisions that would determine which version of the truth survived. Jun Rol leaned against a painted castle facade, his expensive suit incongruous among the artificial royalty. You could turn left instead of right, drive to the nearest federal building, trade that drive for immunity. I could. He studied her face. So why aren't you? Because 3 months ago the answer would have been simple. Now she'd crossed too many lines to pretend at innocence, helped traffic drugs that destroyed families, delivered threats that terrorized children, translated conversations that facilitated violence. But she'd also learned that the world wasn't divided between criminals and civilians, just people making impossible choices with insufficient options. I want a deal, Sasha said, but not with them, with you. Jun Rol's eyebrow raised. I'm listening. The organization goes legitimate. Real imports, legal operations. You transition everything that can be salvaged into clean business. She pulled out the thumb drive. This evidence gets you leverage, proof that Che was operating independently, setting you up. You cooperate with the investigation, expose his network, keep yourself out of prison. And you? I disappear from the records. a translator who was never really there. You pay for Marcus's medical school, fully, and you fund a community center in my grandmother's neighborhood. Legal, transparent, clean money. She met his eyes. Redemption isn't free, but I'm offering you the chance to buy it. Jun Rol was quiet for a long moment. Outside, distant sirens suggested the search was expanding. Finally, he extended his hand. You drive a hard bargain, Miss Reed. She shook it. I learned from the best. Then we make one more delivery, Jun Rol said, pulling out his phone. To my lawyer. Before the feds find us, we control the narrative. Sasha started the car. One final route to navigate. One last delivery that might save them both. Or damn them completely. 6 months later, Sasha sat in the back of a university auditorium watching her brother accept an award for academic excellence. Marcus's white coat gleamed under the stage lights, his smile genuine and uncomplicated by the knowledge of how his education had been purchased. She'd decided early that he'd never know. Some truths were too heavy to share. The program listed him as a recipient of the Ma Foundation Scholarship, a fully endowed fund supporting first-generation medical students. The foundation's website featured glossy photos of Jun Rol in a business suit, no visible tattoos, shaking hands with university presidents. The press release described his journey from immigrant family to successful import-export entrepreneur, his commitment to giving back. It was all true, technically. The federal investigation had concluded 3 months ago. Che and 4 others were serving federal time for drug trafficking, money laundering, and racketeering. Jun Rol had cooperated extensively, providing evidence that dismantled an entire distribution network while carefully repositioning himself as a victim of rogue lieutenants who'd corrupted his legitimate business operations. His lawyers were very good, the kind of good that blood money could buy. Sasha's name appeared nowhere in the public records. As far as the federal database knew, she'd been a contract translator for a few business meetings, properly paid through legitimate channels, unaware of any illegal activities. The fabricated financial records Che had created had been exposed as forgeries, convenient evidence of his frame-up scheme. She'd walked away clean, at least legally. After the ceremony, Marcus found her in the crowd, pulling her into a hug that nearly lifted her off her feet. Did you see? Top of my class, and Dr. Chen said I'm being considered for the surgical residency program. I saw. Grandma would be so proud. The words caught in her throat. None of this would be possible without you. Marcus's eyes were bright with emotion. Those extra shifts you worked, everything you sacrificed. Just doing what family does, Sasha interrupted, unable to hear his gratitude for blood money laundered through legitimate foundations. They walked through the campus together, Marcus talking about his classes, his patients, his future. Everything he said was innocent, untainted by the machinery that had made it possible. She let his voice wash over her, a reminder of why she'd made the choices she had. Her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number, though she recognized the pattern. Jun Rol changed phones monthly now, maintaining distance while keeping channels open. The community center opens next month, your grandmother's name on the building. You should be there. She wouldn't be. Couldn't stand in front of a building purchased with extortion and drug money, even if it was now serving free meals and after-school programs, even if children who looked like her were safer because of it. Redemption was more complicated than transactions. Are you okay? Marcus asked, noticing her distraction. Yeah, just work stuff. She'd taken a position teaching Korean at the university, legitimate employment, honest pay, students who had no idea their instructor had once translated for a criminal empire. Sometimes she woke up at 3 a.m. remembering the man in the restaurant, his daughter's photos in that box, wondering if he'd managed to pay his debt, if that little girl still played at the same playground, oblivious to how close she'd come to being leverage. Sometimes she checked the news for Jun Rol's legitimate business ventures, watching his empire transform from shadows into something that passed for respectability in the daylight. Most days, she simply taught her classes, helped Marcus with his studies, and tried to believe that good things could grow from poisoned soil.
As they reached the parking lot, Marcus turned to her with sudden seriousness. I know things were hard. I know you did things you're not proud of to get me here. But you saved my life, Sasha. Whatever it cost, it was worth it. She wanted to tell him the truth, that worth wasn't calculated in outcomes, but in the price paid, that her hands would never be fully clean. Instead, she hugged him tight and said, "Let's go celebrate. Your choice of restaurant." "Anywhere but Korean," Marcus laughed. "You've been speaking it so much lately, I'm starting to forget English." Sasha smiled, hollow but functional. Deal. They drove into the evening, her brother's future bright and purchased, her past buried beneath foundations that would serve thousands. And if the weight of it crushed her slowly, privately, in the spaces between heartbeats, well, that was simply the price of survival. Some debts could never be fully paid. Thank you all for following this story to the end. If you enjoyed it, please write in the comments where in the world you're watching from. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video, as your support is crucial for me to continue creating content.